That can't be left on one side, right? IAS 21 is the effect of changes in foreign exchange rates. The funny thing this time is we have actually covered IAS 21 application in foreign subsidiary and foreign operations में वो cover हो चुका है. And for people who have done FM, AFM, you have had some exposure to foreign currency. IAS 21 surprisingly makes it to quite a lot of independent subparts in the exam. So a 4 mark or sometimes even a 6 mark subpart is on this. Like I told you, this ruble company question in the kit, उसमें का one subpart is only about foreign currency. 6 to 7 marks का है, ठीक है? So the standard that way is important. Now, understand one thing. See, different countries have their own different currencies. Like we have rupee, and then there is dollar and euro and yen and God knows whatever, pounds and all of that, of course. Now, here the challenge arises from the fact that Karan is in Hong Kong, right? Karan, तुम्हारा करेंसी बताना तो.
10 or 11 है अभी. $1
अरे
$1
नाम
is equal
बता.
to
अरे
10
नाम
rupees. Oh, Hong Kong dollar.
हांगकांग डॉलर. ओके. ओके, सो करन का करन नहीं, हांगकांग का करेंसी इज हांगकांग डॉलर. ठीक है. अब करण वांट्स टू ज्वाइन माय बैच. देखो फॉरेन स्टूडेंट है तो मैं तो डबल ट्रिपल बिलिंग करूंगा. ठीक है. सो करण, थोड़ा मेरे औकात में ही बोलता हूँ. $500 टू, हाँ चलो पैसे है यार उसके पास, क्या प्रॉब्लम है. आई से SBR बैच $500. करण के पास बहुत पैसा है, ही डजंट कैरी, सर ये रख लो. बट द प्रॉब्लम इज व्हेन आई इनवॉइस्ड मानव हु स्टेज लिटरली नेक्स्ट डोर, or I invoiced Roshan who is also in India. When I invoiced them, the invoicing was in rupees. But when I invoiced Karan, the invoicing was in dollar. And that is where the problem arises. See, it's like adding elephants and oranges now. That addition doesn't make any sense. You cannot add elephants and oranges. Similarly, you cannot add rupees and dollars unless they are in one currency. You cannot add 10,000 rupees and $500 and say my total income is 10,500. Well, if you want to do that, then ACCA probably is not the right course for you. है ना? If you are interested in adding rupees and dollars. But if you want ACCA to be the right course for you, you should know that the foreign currency, whatever it is, has to be converted into your currency before you do the accounting. Now, if I am in India, I am presenting my financial statements in rupees. So, rupee is my presentation currency. ठीक है. But presentation currency, and there is a new term that we are introducing to you now, which is functional currency. Presentation currency is the currency in which the financial reports are presented. तो इंडिया का फंक्शन, सॉरी, हाँ, प्रेजेंटेशन करेंसी इज द करेंसी इन विच द फाइनेंशियल रिपोर्ट्स आर प्रेजेंटेड. इंडिया में प्रेजेंटेशन करेंसी इज INR. ठीक है. यूके में इट इज GBP, यूएसए में इट इज USD. बट देर इज अ न्यू टर्म विच इज कॉल्ड एज द फंक्शनल करेंसी. Functional currency means the currency in which you function, the currency in which your operations happen. That is functional currency. Now imagine a determination of functional currency in itself. There are certain rules that IAS 21 lays down. ठीक है. There are three primary factors which help you to decide the currency that mainly influences the sale price of goods and services. ठीक है. I am in India. I am 100% export oriented unit and I am selling goods to clients in USA. ठीक है. So what is the currency which determines the selling price of goods and services? USD. Correct. Because although I am operating from India, my sales are not happening in India. My sales are to customers in the United States. So in this situation, what happens is the currency which primarily influences the selling price of goods and services, that becomes my functional currency. Now, it you could have a situation, where 80% of your sales are to USA, 20% of your sales are to UK. What is the currency that mainly influences the selling price of goods and services? The dollar. So dollar becomes your functional currency. The second rule here is the currency that mainly influences the labor, material, and other cost of providing goods and services. Now, I'm sure you know companies like Zara. They don't manufacture in Europe or USA because labor there is very expensive. Unfortunately, they come to third world countries like India and our neighbors who also unfortunately are all third world countries. So Zara has set up a plant in Bangladesh where labor and material is not necessarily material, but labor is very, very cheap in Bangladesh. Size of the country, population, everybody vying for the same resources. So material is also taken from Bangladesh. Um, Labor is also from that country. Production is happening in that country. Now let us say that Zara uses Zara pays for the material, labor, etc. Everything it pays in the currency of Bangladesh, which is called Taka. So even if head office is in another country, uska jo main goods and services hai, that is getting manufactured in Bangladesh. So the Bangladesh currency influences the purchase price of material, labor, and all of these items. That becomes your functional currency. ठीक है. So two rules. Third rule, the currency of country whose competitive forces and regulations mainly determine the sale price of goods and services. So if you are engaged in a price war in some country, and because of multiple reasons, the policies of that country, the company law policy, income tax policy, competition laws, everything of, say, France influences the price at which I'm going to sell the goods and services, then that becomes the functional currency. Oftentimes, you will get questions in the paper asking you to identify what the functional currency is. ठीक है, एक बार ये तीनों पढ़ो. These are the primary factors to decide which currency is functional currency. ठीक है. Now, these are the primary factors. If the primary factors are inconclusive, that is, you cannot get a satisfactory answer there, then you must evaluate the secondary factors. The currency in which funds from financing activities are raised. So, say I am in India, but I raise my finance from an investor in Singapore, then that might become my functional currency. The currency in which the currency in which receipts from operating activities are retained. Say I conduct my operations across multiple countries and I get my receipts in when I deal with USA, I get USD. When I deal with UK, I get pound. When I deal with China, I get yen. But these amounts are transferred to India and they are retained in India. So the receipts in which the currency in which the receipts from operating activities are retained, that becomes my functional currency. So आपको अगर क्वेश्चन में if they ask you कि determine what the functional currency is, lay emphasis on the primary test. ठीक है, primary test apply करो. See if it fits in any of those. If it does not fit in any of those, then think about the secondary test. ठीक है, and then do a comparative analysis. Like when we used to determine who is the acquirer, what we did was we used to make two columns and we used to put tick marks, and that way the one which has the higher number of tick marks against it, that will help you to decide what the functional currency is. Because paper में sometimes they will put a confusing point कि ये भी लग रहा है वो भी लग रहा है दोनों लग रहा है. ठीक है, so let's do a question. I'll give you time to read the question, think about it, and then tell me what the functional currency is according to you along with the reason, and then of course we'll discuss it together. ठीक है, ये देखिए, please go through this. I'm giving you 5 minutes. मिस्टर शाह, ध्यान ही नहीं है उसका।
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
हाँ, क्वेश्चन पढ़िए।
हाँ, sir. What is the functional currency of Chive? Chive is an entity located in a country whose currency is dollars. All of its equity shares are owned by an entity whose functional currency is euro. Chive has very few transactions with its parents and act with significant autonomy. 70% of Chive's sales are dominated in dollars and 30% of them are dominated in sterling. Chive does not convert receipts from customers into another currencies. Chive buys most of its inventories and pays for a large proportion of operating cost in sterling. Chive has two bank loan outstanding. It has no intra-group loans. Both of its loans are denominated in dollars.
ओके, नाउ चाइव इज एन एंटिटी लोकेटेड इन अ कंट्री हुज करेंसी इज द डॉलर। आपका जो प्रेजेंटेशन करेंसी है वो डॉलर है। ऑल ऑफ इट्स इक्विटी शेयर्स आर ओन्ड बाय एन एंटिटी हुज फंक्शनल करेंसी इज द यूरो। ठीक है, होल्डिंग कंपनी है। Chive is the subsidiary of a company जिसका currency is euro. Chive has very few transactions with its parent and acts with significant autonomy. Usually, the functional currency of the holding becomes the currency of the subsidiary because the subsidiary is heavily dependent on the holding company for decision making, for transactions, for policies, and it basically follows what the holding company does. But यहाँ पे they have mentioned that Chive has very few transactions with the parent and acts with significant autonomy. So, Chive has the ability to make its own decisions and it doesn't really depend upon the holding. So, the currency of the holding might not become the currency of the subsidiary. 70% of Chive sales are denominated in dollars and 30% of them are denominated in sterling. ठीक है, so the currency that mainly influences the sale price of goods and services will become the functional currency. So if 70% is in dollar and 30% is in sterling, then safe to say that dollar might appear as the functional currency, might become the functional currency. Chive does not convert receipt from customers into other currencies, which means if you have received money in dollar, you will retain that in dollar. If you have received money in sterling pounds, be retained in that. ठीक है, then Chive buys most of its inventories and pays for a large proportion of operating cost in sterling. Now if you look at the cost part, ठीक है, the currency that mainly influences labor, material, and other cost of providing goods and services, which is that currency which helps you to or which influences the cost side of things, pound. So in one aspect it is dollar, in another aspect it is pound. ठीक है, Chive has two loans outstanding and no intra-group loans. Both loans are denominated in dollar. So here, if you are to think of, see, if you say that the primary tests are inconclusive, यहाँ पे ना it's not as if this test is above this and this test is above the third one. The tests are at the same footing. ठीक है, ऐसा नहीं है कि इसका I wrote this test first so that is the first preference. So if you look at the first line, it appears as if dollar is the functional currency. If you look at the cost side, it feels as if pound is the functional currency. So your primary tests are inconclusive, right? You cannot get a satisfactory answer. So you must evaluate secondary factors. Currency in which funds from financing activities are raised. Funds are raised in mostly in dollar. So that appears. Second condition क्या है? Currency in which operating receipts are retained. 70% receipts are in dollar and they are retained in dollar. 30% receipts are in pounds, they are retained in pounds. So which is the currency in which the receipts appear to be retained?
Dollar.
Dollar.
Dollars.
Dollar.
Majority is again
So
in dollar.
majority is in dollar. So can we say that, see, primary conditions तो inconclusive था, but can we look at the secondary conditions and come to a conclusion that अपना डॉलर इज द फंक्शनल करेंसी? ठीक है,
Yes,
आई
sir.
21 के हिसाब से प्राइमरी कंडीशंस आर क्लियरली इनकंक्लूसिव. So if primary factors are inconclusive, then you go to the secondary factors. Secondary में दोनों conditions are pointing towards the dollar. Both secondary conditions are pointing towards the dollar. So we can now say that dollar is the functional currency. ठीक है. एक बार read the solution.
सर
हम्म.
सर जो जो फर्स्ट वाले जो फैक्टर्स है, प्राइमरी फैक्टर्स, उसमें से कोई एक भी अगर हो गया कंसिडर, तो उसको हम मतलब बोल सकते हैं ना कि वो फंक्शनल करेंसी है, कि सभी को सेटिस्फाई करना कंपलसरी है।
So you will have to see which one is more dominant, and you will have to go with that.
ओके सर।
है ना?
हम्म।
ठीक है. Okay. Now, how do we account for foreign currency transactions? First of all, you will have to divide your transactions into two categories. Transactions which are settled at the end of the transactions which are settled during the year, and transactions which remain unsettled even at the end of the year. ठीक है. अब let's say for example, there is a person who has made sales to someone in a foreign country, and the person pays you during the year. ठीक है. तो how do you account for that? When an entity enters into a transaction which is denominated in a currency other than the functional currency, the transaction must be translated. ठीक है. The exchange rate used to record the transaction should be either spot rate on the date the transaction took place or an average rate over a period of time, provided the exchange rate has not fluctuated significantly. When cash settlement occurs, the settled amount should be, of course, translated using the functional currency using the spot rate on the settlement date. Now let's take a simple situation where Satyamed is in India. He sold goods to Garvit, who is in USA. The invoice is made in US dollar. The sale was for 200 US dollar and was done on 3rd of July 2025 when the exchange rate was $1 equal to 80. ठीक है. $200 का सेल है, and $200 is, of course, I cannot account for the transaction in dollar. Why? Because that is not my functional currency, so I will have to convert. On the date the transaction took place, what was the exchange rate? The exchange rate was $1 equal to 80. So I multiplied 200 by 80 and I got 16,000. In the books of Satyamev, the transaction is recorded as Garvit account debit to sales, 200 US dollar into 80 INR per dollar. 16,000 में record कर लिया. Now on 3rd of September 2005, which is a couple of months later, Garvit paid the amount to Satyamed. ठीक है, एंड ही ट्रांसफर्ड फुल $200 फ्रॉम यूएसए। ठीक है, अब व्हेन ही ट्रांसफर्ड फुल $200 फ्रॉम यूएसए क्या हुआ, he remitted $200. Exchange rate was $1 equal to 82. So when the money hit my bank account, how much did I get? 200 into 82, I got 16,400 as a deposit in my bank account. ठीक है, and Garvit was a debtor whom I had debited with 16,000. So when he paid me, I credited him again with 16,000. ठीक है, and while I had recorded the receivable at 16,000, how much did I earn? Sorry, how much cash did I get? I got around 16,400 cash. तो ये जो 400 ज़्यादा I got, that 400 extra is my foreign exchange gain. Now, you could have a situation where instead of the exchange rate being $1 equal to INR 82, the exchange rate becomes $1 equal to INR, say 79. So Garvit will transfer $200 from USA. He sent $200, but because the exchange rate was $1 equal to 79, how much money hit my bank account? 200 into 79, 15,800 hit my bank account. ठीक है, receivable was 16,000. I ended up getting only 15,800. But now I cannot hold Garvit responsible for anything because he has transferred the $200 that he was supposed to give me, right? And because he transferred the $200 that he was supposed to give me, I cannot collect anything else from him, so that 200 becomes my foreign exchange loss. ठीक है, so when there so if the transaction is settled during the year, what you should do is you should convert it. So when you make the sale, record the sale using the exchange rate at the date of transaction. ठीक है, and when the amount is settled, use the exchange rate on the settlement date. The difference is your gain or loss. ठीक है, now this is a situation when the transaction is settled. Example 2 is transaction is not settled at the end of the financial year and there is a monetary item. चलो, let's go back to our favorite question. बताइए, what is monetary item?
Item which for which we are to pay or receive a fixed amount of cash.
Ama
So items which
I
can be converted into fixed or
into six or seven.
determinable amounts of cash are monetary items. And what are non-monetary items?
Items other
Item
than
for
money.
Where
which we
fixed
cannot determine the amount to be received.
Okay,
Everything other than monetary items are basically non-monetary.
okay. Now debtors, are they monetary or are they non-monetary?
monetary, sir.
Monetary.
Monetary.
Why? Because in case of debtors, you know exactly how much amount are you going to receive. Correct? So Satyamit is in India. He sold goods to Garvit, who is in USA. ठीक है, 3rd Feb को सेल हुआ $200, exchange rate was $1 equal to 80. So how much of a receivable are you recording? You are recording 200 into 80, that is 16,000 as the receivable. ठीक है, now the situation is that the customer has not paid the amount till 31st of March 2025. Year comes to an end. If the balance outstanding on balance sheet date is a monetary item, then the balance in that account should be retranslated using the rate on the balance sheet date. The difference is routed via P&L. ठीक है, now in this case, balance outstanding on balance sheet date is a monetary item. Why? Because debtors are a monetary item. You know the exact amount of cash that you are expecting to receive. ठीक है, तो वो आपने डाल दिया. Now the exact amount that you are expecting to receive is, you know in your mind that it is 16,000. ठीक है, so on 31st of March 2025, exchange rate is $1 equal to 81. Garvit the debtor has already been translated from USD to INR at the rate of 1 USD equal to 80 rupees. ठीक है, on 31st of December the amount has not been recovered from him. ठीक है, so because the amount is still outstanding on 31st of March 25, what we are going to do is we will have to retranslate it using the rate on the balance sheet date. ठीक है, what is the rate on the balance sheet date? द रेट ऑन द बैलेंस शीट डेट इज $1 इक्वल टू 81, ठीक है। सो 200 इंटू 81 करो, ठीक है। व्हेन यू डू 200 इंटू 81, हाउ मच डू यू गेट? 16,200, ठीक है।
Yes,
You
sir.
have a debtor who is which is recorded at 16,000, and now you have that debtor which is retranslated at 16,200, ठीक है। Now that it is translated at 16,200, that additional 200 is like a gain for you, ठीक है। That additional 200 is your gain, and because of that you will record an entry घर with account debit to forex gain, ठीक है। Now if there is a non-monetary item involved, then that non-monetary item is not retranslated on the balance sheet date, only the monetary item is retranslated, ठीक है। ये वाला एक बार ट्रांजैक्शन देखो, look at the basic info that they have given.
So what about if we have some amount in our foreign exchange, like we have multiple bank accounts and we have like USD also.
मतलब
Then also we need to retranslate. Like we have one account
हम्म,
where we can like have USD also, GBP also, and current like INR also. So they should also be retranslated every time, every year.
but ऐसा क्यों होगा? हाउ कैन यू हैव द सेम बैंक अकाउंट डिनोमिनेटेड इन डिफरेंट वेज? आप अगर इंडिया में अकाउंट ओपन करोगे तो आपका तो अकाउंट रुपीस में ही रहेगा ना।
Oh.
If I open it in Hong Kong, it will be in Hong Kong dollar only. I cannot have the same
हम्म।
bank account. मतलब अलग अलग नहीं हो पाएगा ना।
हाँ नहीं वो तो पता नहीं है, पर हम रख सकते हैं मतलब एक बैंक अकाउंट में हमारे पास ऑप्शन होता है कि यूएसडी भी रख सकते हैं हम, जीबीपी भी, और कोई कोई अकाउंट बैंक अकाउंट मोस्टली बिजनेस अकाउंट में होता है।
हाँ,
डाउट।
बट वो सिचुएशन हम यहाँ पे नहीं देख रहे हैं। दैट्स वे टू कॉम्प्लेक्स फॉर एसबीआर,
ओके।
ठीक है। नाउ I purchased machinery from a US supplier. Machinery account debit to US supplier. ठीक है। $1,000 का मशीन था, 1,000 into 80 becomes 80,000, ठीक है। The amount was still unpaid on 31st of March. If the balance outstanding is a monetary item, then the balance in that account should be retranslated using the rate on the balance sheet date. US supplier, $1,000 is payable to him. The rate becomes 82. Amount payable to US supplier $1,000 था, multiply that with 82, it becomes $82,000, ठीक है। You have a payable which is recorded at 80,000 and now you are retranslating that at 82,000, ठीक है। So what difference does that make? क्रेडिटर का वैल्यू इंक्रीज हो गया इन योर बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स, राइट। सो फॉरेक्स लॉस अकाउंट डेबिट टू यूएस सप्लायर, बट नॉन मॉनिटरी आइटम्स आर नॉट रीट्रांसलेटेड ऑन द रिपोर्टिंग डेट। मशीनरी इज अ नॉन मॉनिटरी आइटम, तो उसको आप रीट्रांसलेट नहीं करेंगे, इट विल रिमेन एट 80,000 ओनली, ठीक है। And if the transaction is not settled at the end of the financial year and the non-monetary item gets revalued, ठीक है। So Priya purchased a machinery worth $1,000 from a supplier in USA. The purchase was done on 31 Jan 2025 when the exchange rate was $1 equal to 80, ठीक है। मशीनरी अकाउंट डेबिट टू यूएस सप्लायर कर लिया आपने यूजिंग द रेट ऑन द ट्रांजैक्शन डेट। नाउ machinery gets revalued on 31st of March 2025 at 1100. On this date, the rate of exchange is $1 equal to 82. What they are saying is 11, it was purchased for 1,000 and the revaluation is at a value of $1,100. But on that date, the rate of exchange is 82, which is 90,200. So in this case, IAS 21 says कि ये जो gain है ना, 80,000 to 90,200, 10,200 का जो gain है, that entire gain goes to revaluation surplus. Don't put anything in forex gain. मतलब if you are revaluing a piece of plant and machinery, then do not spend time in splitting the gain between reval surplus and gain on account of foreign exchange fluctuation. The entire amount should go to your revaluation surplus only, ठीक है। And in terms of handling year end balances, ठीक है, what is the nature of year end balances? If the year end balances are monetary items, then retranslate using the rate on the balance sheet date, जैसे you did for debtors. If the year end balances are not monetary items, sorry, non monetary items like building हो गया, current assets हो गया, do not retranslate. If an item is carried at fair value, the fair value should be translated on the date it was determined. ठीक है. So monetary and non-monetary items, just be careful. Monetary items are retranslated at the balance sheet date and non-monetary items are not retranslated at the balance sheet date. Okay, so this is a basic point that you need to bear in mind. Now we have already tackled a lot of these situations actually in our consolidated foreign, मतलब consolidated जो अपना ये वाला पार्ट था, consolidated balance sheet, consolidated P&L for a foreign subsidiary. वहाँ पे actually we did see, right, how the differences are tackled and that goes to foreign currency translation reserve. तो वो वाला पार्ट हमने ऑलरेडी देख लिया था, बट ये जो functional currency वाला पॉइंट था that we had not discussed. So I thought we should have a quick discussion on that. Now I'm left with just one question. ठीक है. और what I am thinking is, let's pick up a day in the upcoming week. ठीक है. We'll sit and we'll do that one question on foreign subsidiary. मतलब उसमें ना, in that question there is no pre-populated balance sheet. मतलब you don't have to prepare a full-fledged foreign subsidiary. मैं आपको दिखाता हूँ वहां पे क्या है. देर आर सर्टन गुडविल कैलकुलेशन हो गया या उतना उतना कैलकुलेशन ही आपको करना है, बट दैट विल सर्व एज अ गुड रिविजन. सो ट्यूसडे, वेंसडे, वन ऑफ द 2 days, कभी भी आई विल हैव अ स्मॉल 1 hour सेशन एंड वील डू दैट क्वेश्चन. ठीक है. द रिविजन सेशंस फॉर द रिविजन बैच विल कंटिन्यू. द रेगुलर बैच स्टूडेंट्स, नाउ यू कैन take time off from me, not from studies.